It should be past the second tab.
Okay.
You have the PA in there. It should be about 6 or 7 pages back. It should say KW Advantage, Keller Williams, Occupancy Addendum.
It's past the purchase agreement.
Correct, right past the
Yep,
purchase.
I have it.
All righty then. Andre, what are you eating? You have to share with me. The rule is if you, well, I guess it's hard to share if you're not here, so. All right. The occupancy addendum, if you look on the purchase agreement on the new one, it's going to refer to occupancy addendum, correct? What number is that, Doug, on the PA? Do you have it? Did I get the old one?
Number 5.
The old one?
No, the new one.
Number 5 is occupancy.
On the new PA, number 5 talks about the occupancy addendum, and this is what it's referring to. If there is occupancy after close, you need to do this. And a lot of people, you guys, do not have an occupancy addendum. It's literally one paragraph in the purchase agreement. I managed to take one paragraph and turn it into 3 pages. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Okay. So as stated in the purchase agreement between seller and buyer dated, which would be the same date of the purchase agreement, the parties understand that the seller may occupy the property located at, that is the property address, write that in, property address, for blank days following the closing of the sale. Shit. Jess. I changed this thing. Does all of yours, you guys say, for blank days following the closing of the sale of the property, in addition to the terms stated in section 5 of the purchase agreement, the following terms also apply to the seller's occupancy?
Yes.
It all says that.
Yes.
Did we change it?
Yes.
Remember we changed it? Did it ever get uploaded?
What are we doing?
One of the paragraphs in it, the top and one. Then it goes, yours goes on to say post-closing occupancy. Make a note on that, please. Seller is permitted to occupy the property from the date of closing for up to blank days after closing. This form has been changed.
Keller Williams command brings the agent operating system and the consumer operating system together
Yes.
seamlessly.
What the hell is it? You guys all hear this?
Organize everything for me and put it in one place. But you have to,
Yes.
got at your fingertips.
Hey, Pete, did you get a hat? Taking a while to stand here. I don't think this is the same one that's online.
You think it doesn't have, it's not repeating?
Yeah, I don't know.
The first paragraph in number 1 kind of is a repetitious. And that's what I was trying to get out of there. Okay. So you're going to put in there how many days occupancy you guys want. All right. After the date of closing, including the day of closing at blank PM on the termination date. So you can put in there, 5 PM, the date of the termination date. Okay. Now, just so you know, the day of closing counts as a day of occupancy. The day of termination counts as a day. All right. The period of time from the closing date until the termination date is referenced in this addendum as the term. Seller is not authorized and may not under any circumstances occupy the property after the termination date unless buyers and sellers agree in writing. If buyers and seller agree to extend the term, seller's continued occupancy of the property during such period of time is referred to the extended term. So if you put in there 30 days occupancy, that's considered the term. If down the road you extended it, that would be the extended term. Sellers must pay an occupancy charge to occupy the property after closing date. The following terms apply to the occupancy charge. Now, in today's market, when this thing was written, the market wasn't as hot as it is now. And there's a lot of free occupancy going on here. So if you needed to cross that line out, you could do that. The occupancy charge is blank dollars per day. What number goes in there, or what goes in there?
What-
Right?
What's that, Hope?
The daily rate,
Okay, and where do you get the daily rate?
the mortgage company that is going to finance it.
Correct. You guys, a lot of times with occupancy, you'll see 1/30th NMP or 1/30th PITI. What do those stand for? Nobody knows what they stand for? Let's go.
Per-
NMP.
Principal,
New
interest and
mortgage
terms.
payment?
New monthly payment?
New monthly payment or new mortgage payment. And Marcia, what did you say about the other one, the 1/30th PITI? You
You're
knew,
saying the
you just said
principal, the interest and the terms?
principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Okay? Now, that's what the lazy agents do. Hope, on the other hand, goes right to the mortgage company and find out what that number is. A mortgage lender should be able to tell you if you give them, here's the thing, this is why you want to make sure you touch base with the mortgage lender before you write the offer. Okay, to find out certain things. And he's probably going to ask you, so what are the taxes on this property? Once you give him the taxes, he should be able to come up with a pretty close idea of the payment. What you can do, let's say it's $35 a day. You can put down $37. You can put down whatever you want. I would much rather see dollars in there than 1/30th NMP or 1/30th PITI. Title companies don't like that either. All right. So if you can get a dollar amount, you're far better off. Okay. The occupancy charge may include a prorated amount of mortgage principal, interest, real estate property taxes, and insurance premiums, or any amount the buyer and seller agree upon. What if you put down 1/30th NMP and the client's paying cash for the deal?
It's a great
What if-
deal.
It's zero.
It's a great deal for who?
The sellers.
The seller, that's correct. However, what do you think the buyer is going to say at some point? That's not what I meant. You guys have the term ambiguous, that's what comes up. That's why put in a dollar amount. Should the seller stay for free if there's no mortgage? What would you do if there was no mortgage?
Come on.
I would do 30 days free occupancy, but then charge them something afterwards if they needed it.
Okay, you could do 30 days. Let's say we're not in the really hot market, so you don't have to give them the 30 days. What would you guys do? Doug?
I take the average rent for that particular area and divide it by 30 and come up with that as the daily rate.
No, I wouldn't use the rent. What I would use is, what's that?
Average.
Now, I would probably take a 20% down loan and figure out what that would be. So, I'd figure out what the mortgage payment would be on a 20% down loan, add in the taxes and call it a day. Right? You're better off, I can't emphasize enough, you gotta put in a dollar amount. Don't use 1/30th NMP. All right? All right, so as of the closing date, seller will deposit the sum of blank with blank. What amount goes in there?
The amount of per day, days times the amount of days that you're planning.
Okay, so let's just go back up to number 1. And we're gonna do a little, let's say we wrote in there 60 days. Okay? So just in parentheses, so you don't think you're writing 60 days all the time, but put in 60 days there. I want to do something here. And an A in 2A, what if it's $4,500 a day? What's going in B?
$4,500
Oh,
a day.
I'm sorry, $45 a day.
That's a nice house you got going there.
You're gonna multiply those two together.
2,700.
So in Doug's world, that would be $2,700, not $2 zillion, like I was saying. So write that in there, you guys, and I want you to understand, we're gonna talk about this in a second. All right, so you have $2,700 in there, just for our example. You might want to put example purposes. And then with would be the title company. You could put the name of whoever you're using for the, you could put in there buyer's title company. Or wait. Seller's title company, I'm sorry. So in that blank, write in seller's title company.
I'm sorry,
Escrow,
can you, what you say right in there?
the word
blank.
seller's title company.
Thank you.
Mhm. Escrow agent shall hold and administer the occupancy charge according to a separate escrow agreement signed by both buyer and seller. At a minimum, the escrow agent agreement shall provide that the escrow agent is authorized to deliver to the buyer on the termination date the entire amount of funds held for the occupancy charge unless buyer otherwise directs in writing. I want to talk about something here. If you close on a property today, what's today's date? April 7th. All right, for you people on the screen, when is your first payment due?
June?
June 7th.
June 1.
June 1, is that what somebody said?
Yes.
Do we all agree with that? What about May?
You're paying for it today.
Was that Deb saying that stuff up there? Who was saying that?
Not me.
Pat? Oh. When is interest charged?
Isn't it 30 days after? Because that's why their payment is,
Well.
they technically get like a month free
You're going
because
there, but the question was, interest is always charged in arrears except at closing. Okay, so if you have a payment due June 1st, that's actually the interest from May. That makes sense? So you're paying for the interest from the end of April to May 1st, the day of closing. Then it's got to go 30 days past that to collect interest. So your payment is due June 1. All right. So when you're writing offers, you guys, and I bring this up for a couple reasons. When you're writing offers, you know, sometimes people think, oh my God, well, if I let them stay in the house free for 30 days and I'm living in my apartment, I'm going to have to pay a double payment. Well, in reality, they're not going to have to really make a double payment because their first payment's not due till the following month. Does that make sense? So let's say we have 60 days occupancy, correct? And their first payments due what? June 1?
Right.
So you got 60 days occupancy and they move out on the 7th. That payment needed to be made on the 1st, right? Wouldn't you like your sellers to have their money to make that first payment in advance? Not in advance, but when the payment's due. Okay, this next paragraph addresses that. If occupancy by seller is to extend longer than 30 days, escrow agent shall release the purchaser each 30 days an amount equal to the occupancy charge for each 30-day period in which the seller occupies the property. You understand what that means? So at the 30 days from now, okay, you can call up the title company and say, we need you to release to your client, my client, I should say, the occupancy charge so they can make their mortgage payment when it comes due. The title company isn't automatically going to do that. And it's important that you notify the title company that. I had one of my first deals where there was 90 days occupancy. Luckily, I had the buyer. No, I had the seller, sorry. And there was 90 days occupancy. Buyer never asked for the money. What do you think happened? His first 2 mortgage payments were late. Not the way you want to start off the mortgage company, is it? It's good news he had 29 months and 29 years and 10 months to catch up. So do you understand what I'm saying? It's important. If there's longer than 30 days, make sure you get that occupancy released. And guess what? That would be a good touch for you, right? To stay in touch with your client after closing. Hey, just want to let you know I had the title company send you your check for occupancy for the first 30 days. All right. Some people think, what's that?
Hope, quick question. So is that something that we should arrange early prior to close?
You can't arrange it, hope until you get past the 30th day.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You've got to get to that point and then ask for it. So, okay. If seller vacates, let me stop for a second. If there's 60 days occupancy and the buyer moves out on the 10th day, what happens? Is the seller pay for all 60
Give me
days?
1 second to mute my conference. All right. So, so where were we? We were talking about.
Was that Hope?
I think that's all. There we
All
go.
right. So you guys, if the seller moves out 10 days into the occupancy, are they responsible for the whole occupancy?
Oh.
Marcia, I wish you could see your face. You look, for a second there, you look completely baffled. I think you were frozen. No, they don't owe that. They only pay for the days that they're in the house. Now, can the purchase agreement be written to where they pay for the whole thing?
Sure.
Absolutely. As long as it's in writing and both parties agree to it. I'm going to give you the bad agent, bad client version of this. Let's say Doug has the seller. I got the buyer, and it was an ugly deal, but it came to the closing table, and Doug was still mad at the closing. And Doug had 60 days occupancy. My buyer, guess what they needed to do because they were staying in an apartment? They needed to extend their lease, right? At some ridiculous amount of money. So Doug, we close. My client's got 60 days occupancy in their apartment. What do you think Doug does on the first day? He moves out. My buyer now is responsible for the mortgage payment and their rent payment. So I don't tell you this so you screw people. I tell you this. Things happen, okay? Somebody says, I don't need, I need to stay 30 days or 60 days. And then guess what? Their new house is ready to go and they can move out. So your client shouldn't bank that they're going to be there all 60 days. Just tell them it's up to 60 days or 30 days or 90 days.
So Pete, with that said,
Speak louder, Doug.
with that said, I'm actually working with my buyer
Mhm,
and we gave them up to 30 days,
mhm.
but I'm not getting any response out of them as to when they plan, if they have any idea.
When they
plan on
leave?
moving out, because you gotta set up for moving, you gotta set up for utilities. I mean, what's,
Can you guys hear Doug's scenario there?
Kind of.
Basically, it's, yeah, you got 30 days, but you go to call the seller's agent and they say, oh, well, I don't know when we're going to be out. I don't know when we're going to be out. I don't know when we're going to be out. Well, I need to set the mover up. Well, I don't know when we're going to be out. that's more than likely what happens. It comes down, and that's the part that you guys is really tough. If it was me in that scenario representing the buyer, I would plan on them being in there the whole 30 days and pad it by a couple of days before I schedule the mover. And I know people want to get in right away, but so I tell you, Doug, well, we'll be out on the 28th day. And guess what? On the night of the 27th, I call you and say, no, we're not going to make it. We need those last 2 days. You've already scheduled the mover. And now it just gets ugly. Okay. I would always plan on them using the whole time. And to be honest, I would pad it, because what more than likely happens in a lot of cases is they don't get out on the 30th day. So let me ask you guys this. There's 30 days occupancy. Your client's about ready to move in on the 31st day. Only to find out on the night of the 30th, guess what? They're not out. What do you do? What can you do? What can the client do? Well, can't I just get them out? It's my house.
You gotta give them 30 days.
Now, it's not a 30-day notice, but you have to start the eviction process. Okay.
So that can take even longer.
Well, here's the good news. In this case, well, let me rephrase that. If we weren't in COVID, it wouldn't take longer. I don't know how it would happen in today's world with courts. But this stuff does happen. I mean, it really does. I can't emphasize enough. The way to avoid problems, what do you think it is?
Don't give occupancy.
Well, that's one. Unfortunately, in today's world, we'll come back to that. Don't give occupancy. It's the relationship you have with your clients and the other side is what's going to make things hopefully go smoother. If it's an adversarial relationship, you guys, there's problems. You want to make sure that everybody's rowing in the same direction. We agree, or do we agree that we're in a seller's market, right? Yes?
Yes.
So do you think occupancy is more prevalent or less prevalent in a seller's market?
It's more prevalent.
Why?
Well, because of the fact that the sellers are dealing with a shortage in inventory, so it may take them longer to find something if they haven't found anything already. So
Very good, Andrea. You're correct. Okay. Back when it's not a hot market, you could write as a buyer a contingent offer, right? I found Doug's house. Doug accepts my offer, and I make my offer contingent upon me selling my house. Doug says, great, we move on. Or I sell my house. In today's market, they're not going to do that at all, unless the house has been on the market for a while. The other option is I found I sell my house, it hasn't closed. It's not going to close for 45 days, right? I go out and look, I write an offer on Doug's house, and Doug tells me, well, is your offer contingent? And I say, yeah, I sold it, but I haven't closed on it. Is that still contingent? The answer is that is contingent on the closing of the house. Now, in today's market, you think that's going to happen? When people are giving you cash deals left and right? No, it's not. So in most cases, guess how deals are being done now? I sold my house, I closed on my house, now I go look for a house. But what do I need then? I need occupancy on my house. So occupancy gets a lot longer today than it did 2 or 3 years ago. So it's pretty tricky, you guys, to maneuver right now. I mean, that's why, it used to be, didn't matter if you were dealing with a cash offer. It does now. If you got cash and you can close on a property, you're in a much better situation.
So we actually passed on a house last week, my client, because the seller said that
How much
They-
occupancy?
they wanted to find and close on their house before they moved out. It didn't give an exact date or time frame.
And that's out there. That's pretty common. Or you guys might see from a seller's counter, home is contingent upon seller finding house of their choice and closing.
Yeah.
So that kind
That
of
could be
screws,
4 or 5 months.
right, that kind of screws the buyer. Okay? These are unique times and goes back to my little saying about nothing works for everybody. So you need to have different tools on your tool belt to make things work. You know, you ask the people, you're a seller. Do you have, do you have a house to move into? Can you stay with somebody? And most people don't want to make a double move, right? The beauty of pods now, you guys know what pods are? Instead of a moving van, they bring them to your house, you load them up, they go and store them somewhere. The beauty of pods, it does make it easier. You're not worried about where your stuff's going. The only thing you're worried about is where you're staying. So that's one of them. The second thing is you need to talk to the mortgage rep. Can they buy without selling? And if they can, you're dealing with a much better situation. Let me ask you guys this. I'm selling my house and I'm going to sell it and walk out of there with $500,000. And I go write an offer on Daniel's house and I'm going to have $500,000. Is that a cash sale? I'm paying cash for it.
No, that's not a cash sale
Why?
because you're using financing. You're still using financing from the,
I'm not using any financing. The house I'm buying is only worth 400. So I have more than enough cash to pay for it. But is it a cash sale?
Up to you. Whether you choose to use that cash or not.
I'm kind of telling a little slanted story here. If my house isn't closed, it's not a
Oh, no,
cash sale.
Right.
It's still a contingent sale. And that's, believe it or not, agents and clients think I'm going to have the cash. It's a cash sale. And there's not the smartest agents out there on the selling side, the list side. Oh yeah, that's a cash. It's not a cash sale. It's no different. Okay. Until that deal is closed and you have the cash in the hand, then guess what? Then it becomes a cash sale. Prior to that, it's a contingent sale.
So
okay.
if you were to write up the PA though, then what would you select? You're not doing a conventional loan.
You got to, it's contingent on the sale of their home.
Well, it is contingent, but out of those 4
It's
options,
cash contingent
it's
on the
cash.
sale of their
Right.
home.
Okay.
For the closing of their home.
So Pete, would you write that in the PA? Because that's not necessarily a selection on the PA. So would you just write that in
You
there?
put that in under the contingent on the closing of your home. Okay. And the problem is, you guys, agents, the buyer's agents and the seller's agents don't think of that. They just think, okay, cash sale. So guess what happens when Doug's house doesn't close on the 8th of the month, and I'm going to close on my house, or you're going to close on my house on the 12th of the month. Guess what? I'm screwed. Cash sale means you have the funds the day you're writing the offer. Other than that, it's a contingent sale.
Okay.
Don't let anybody else tell you it's not.
Okay, so Pete, since we're talking about occupancy, I'm a little fuzzy on the realtor must notify the title company to release the occupancy so seller pays the mortgage.
Well, think about this. If I'm in that house more than 30 days, there's a good chance I'm going to have to make a mortgage payment, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you not want the cash for your house to make that mortgage payment?
Yes.
Who's holding the money?
Seller,
Who?
like the company,
Okay, that's where I'm fuzzy because
Okay,
if,
go back to line B. The seller will deposit blank with who?
in escrow,
What'd you- No, I told you to fill that in. What did I tell you to fill that in with?
Sellers
title
title
agent.
company.
Or title
Seller's,
company, excuse me.
seller's title company. They've got the money, right?
oh, okay, I wrote that down wrong.
So what'd you write?
I wrote the example, 60 days times $45
No.
a day.
No, the with is the seller's title company. The seller has the money. You want the money from the title company so the buyer can make their mortgage payment.
Okay, I follow now. So the seller is
Okay.
going to put that money with the title company for occupancy.
Absolutely.
Okay, I got
Yeah,
you now. Okay, that's where I
Okay.
was confused. Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right, so back to the portion of the occupancy charge delivered to the buyer will be the per day amount referenced in section 2. Above, multiplied by the number of days seller occupies the property. The balance of the occupancy charge shall be held in escrow, will be charged held in escrow, will be delivered to the seller. So if there's 60 days and the seller moves out on the 30th day, the buyer's getting 30 days, the seller's getting 30 days. All right? Seller understands that seller is not an additional insured under any liability insurance buyer may have obtained even during the term, and seller is not entitled to cover under such insurance. Seller further understands that the seller's personal property will not be insured under any insurance policy buyer may obtain. Are you in there? Come on out here for a second, please. This is where you pop out.
Yeah, sorry.
So occupancy.
Okay,
So what do you, how do you guys,
it depends on their carrier, so this is one thing you want to advise your clients on, to check their policy. It's usually 30 to 60 days maximum
for
occupancy.
the buyer, the
Okay.
new policy?
So the buyer has insurable interest at the time of closing.
Correct.
Right? They own that house. They have to insure that house. So they can give 30 to 60 days for the client to live there. After 60 days, they would actually need to be a rental property. Because that would be the interest. And then the seller needs to convert their insurance policy. They no longer have an insurable interest in that home. So why pay for that home insurance? All they have to do is their personal belongings.
Did you guys hear that? Okay, I gotta ask a question on that.
Hey, Pete.
What
I think-
happens, hold on one second. Buyer puts it on, like we talked about, so they're fine, there's occupancy. What if the seller leaves it on? Is there any damage to the seller leaving their policy on?
Yeah, well, they would not be paid out for any claim because they do not have an insurable interest in the home.
Okay,
So it'd be a waste of money for them.
okay.
Like insuring a car that you don't own. Why would you do that?
Doug insures mine.
So that would be the difference. So it doesn't, it would hurt the seller because they would lose,
They're just losing money.
they're losing money and actually they're paying for something they're not.
Okay. And if they did do that, and the insurance company got into a tussle, let's say the house burned down, really there would be, the seller's insurance company wouldn't be on the hook for anything. It would strictly be the buyers.
Yes, they might cover their
For
personal
the personal
belongings,
belongings.
but that's.
And if they didn't change it over, they'd still be safe on their personal belongings.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So that-
And yeah, my motto has always been too much insurance is better than no insurance, but.
Yeah, but again, it comes down to insurable interest.
right.
So who owns the house?
Okay, so hold on, there was a question. Who had the question?
Yeah, I couldn't hear the last thing she said. So the seller has to purchase renter's insurance for the term of the occupancy?
Is it actually renter's insurance, or is it contents, or what do they actually
They
call it?
call it renter's policy because you're not insuring a building, just your personal
Right.
belongings.
So,
Everything you put on a moving truck at that point. So when you live in the
Okay.
house, things like the drapery, those are considered, things you might take with you. And so there's a little extra money that they build into that, but if it's just everything put on the moving truck, it's a cheaper policy.
okay, so did you guys understand what she was saying? The day of closing, it's and this comes up a lot, okay? Your clients will ask you this. The day of closing, the buyer's protected. Now, if there's occupancy, they might want to find out, so it does vary, it could be 30, could be 60.
Maximum, yeah.
Okay, so if it goes past 60 days, what would happen? I mean, if they didn't convert it?
it could come down to, you know, a denial of a claim. Like, this should have been, you know, at this point, it's a rental, why are they still in there? So sometimes you could get an endorsement, because on a policy, there's an endorsement, you know, listed for sale, but in this case, there's occupancy. They, again, want to make sure that they consult with their insurance company, but after day 61, chances are they're going to need,
To convert it?
and it's usually not expensive,
What's
because you're not
it say?
insuring contents, again,
Right.
just the building.
But if they did that, then you have to do that with the county then, or the city.
No. Has nothing to do with
No, as
transfer.
far as your tax or whatever, if you're.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
This is
because
temporary.
in theory, you're not supposed to claim your principal residence exemption until you move in. Not when the day of closing is. So,
So I thought, look, my last one, I thought they were going, the seller went to go take theirs off, so my buyers had to go put theirs on, but that there's somebody else still living.
I will come to that in a second. And that's a good point, but we'll talk about that. I just want to make sure you guys are clear. Your client, the buyer, is going to have a property or their homeowner's insurance the day of closing. And that's going to happen because the mortgage company is going to make sure they have their insurance, because if the house burns down, guess who'd be out the money? That would be the mortgage company.
Yeah.
They're not going to have that chance.
Okay,
So,
Pete,
yes. Go ahead.
so I just want to make sure that I understand. The sellers only get up to 60 days of occupancy.
Well,
covered.
no, that's not what we're saying. It's if it goes longer than 60 days or 30 days, and this is where the buyer needs to check with their insurance company. Their insurance company might say, okay, if you're going past 30 days, you need a rental policy. Or they may say, if you go past 60
I
days,
see.
you may need
Okay.
a rental policy.
Okay, I got you.
And
So
that's not going to be that much money. However, it's not worth the risk to not do that, because if all of a sudden the house burns down on the 61st day, and you haven't changed that, they could deny your claim or your client's claim, potentially.
Which means that the sellers would even lose monies
No,
to
the
get
sellers
to
wouldn't lose anything. The buyer would lose.
the buyers
It's
would
the
lose.
buyer's
right?
house that would lose.
So you're
Right.
protecting your buyer,
Correct.
their insurable interest, yes. And
Correct.
then in a claim, you know, the house, take the dollar amount, $100,000, if an insurance company can deny any claim, just for the property alone, what are they gonna do? They're gonna, you look for an
Yeah.
excuse to deny
Right.
it.
Yeah, insurance companies, they don't like to pay money. But here's the other thing on that, you guys. Let's say seller cancels their insurance policy the day after or the day of closing, and the house burns down. But the buyer's got insurance. Guess whose stuff isn't covered at that point, right?
Correct.
The seller's insurance isn't covered, or the seller's property is not covered. So the seller needs to change it to a rental policy. The buyer needs to make sure that they're going to be able to keep it on for as long as they need that property.
Yeah, usually for closing date, I always tell the client to make sure, do not cancel your insurance until your closing has gone through. Because something could happen and then you don't have insurance. So, because it's at 12:01.
And I have seen it, you guys, where stuff happens the day of closing and it hasn't closed.
So you would recommend that the seller gets renter's insurance if they stay for occupancy, like off rate?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Pete, just for clarity, where did you say we should come in at in reference to our clients after closing? I mean, I know for just the traditional follow-up, but you were saying that we should remind the sellers
For the
to,
occupancy money.
okay,
That's all I was talking about. For the occupancy money, making sure that you're notifying the title company to get their money back.
okay.
Okay. No, that actually reminded me of one more thing. If I think of it, I'll ask you. I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay. All right. So are we clear on that, you guys? Clear as mud? All right. So Doug had a question that has nothing to do with occupancy. It has to do with claiming your principal residence exemption. Okay. you can't, if I'm closing on my sale today, I can rescind my property done today. And if I'm buying my new property,
that?
what's that? Okay.
I
If
didn't
I'm
hear
closing
that.
on my property today, you need your client, or I'm buying the property and selling property. If I'm selling my property today, I can go rescind my principal residence exemption. You can only have one in Michigan, right? If I have occupancy, I can rescind it, okay, that day, because that's not going to change anything. What I can't do, if I'm living in my house on Oak Street, I can't go put my principal residence exemption on Main Street if I haven't moved in. You have to keep it on. You don't have, let me rephrase that. You don't have to keep it on, but you can't put it on the new property until you're living in there.
So even if you're in an apartment?
Well, you're not living in the new place.
Right, so that's what I mean, so.
You
then
have to be,
if the other
the
guy
key
rescinds
is,
it,
if the other guy rescinds it, it really doesn't matter. Okay, the property is going to still be, even though he rescinds it, it doesn't change that date. Okay, it changes the next time taxes change. It's actually, people don't get it, it actually goes through the whole year. And that's something.
So I have a question about that. So at closing, they say from the closing date, that has to be within 45 days.
That's the property transfer affidavit.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
two different forms. The property
Right.
transfer affidavit, the buyer needs to claim, send that in right away. Why? Let's put it this way. Principal residence helps who? The buyer, correct? Who's the property transfer affidavit that help? We'll see. Well, it actually helps the city or the township. Okay? Because that's notifying them that the property, yep, I can jack up the taxes. That's exactly right. If it doesn't get filed, the city or township may lose the opportunity to jack up the taxes. And we all know that in most cases, taxes are going up when the house sells. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
No doubt. There's no doubt on that in today's world. All right. So you guys understand the insurance. That was good. See how we have our in-house insurance company sitting in there? Woohoo, she got a thumbs up. All right.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
How would you rate this if you were going to give, let's say, 45 days of occupancy and the first 30 days free? How would you write that on here?
It's a little confusing. I would probably end up using a separate addendum or putting it under the other conditions and the PA. And that's, I mean, you just worded it perfectly. It's seller will give 30 days free occupancy or no charge to the seller. And the next 30 days or whatever that is will be at the particular rate. And make sure you write it that, and this, it's not a problem now, but it used to be when this started coming in. They wouldn't write it that the first 30 days is free. Just one little word. If you don't put first. If I just said 30 days occupancy free, exactly. And that came up a lot. Is it the first 30 days or the last 30 days? Because if I move out on the 31st day and I don't know which 30 days I'm paying for, I may have to pay 15 days occupancy, right? So use the term first 30 days is free. All right. Okay. Vacating property. I want to get through this. Seller must vacate the property on or before the termination date. Seller shall not be deemed to have vacated the property until seller, and all three of these, delivers to the property to the buyer in substantially the same condition as existed on the closing date, reasonable wear and tear accepted. Now, you guys, believe me, I don't necessarily think that's the perfect verbiage. Anytime it says substantially or something like that, it's open for interpretation. Okay? So unfortunately, I have not found a better line, and the attorneys wrote that, so I'm going with theirs. Reasonable wear and tear accepted. What's reasonable wear and tear? Hole in the wall? So here's my favorite one. And this has happened on, actually, Claudia Hernandez had this problem. But they found out before the house actually closed. Somebody had this huge room, hardwood floors, with a nice big ornamental oriental rug in the middle of the room. If you pull back the rug, guess what wasn't there? It was
nice floor.
Yeah, there was no hardwood floor. Okay, that's how it was built. My house in Plymouth, and this is a little different, it was the same way when I moved in. I start pulling back, the ugly purple shag carpet was in the room. And I go, damn, there's hardwood floors in here. But as I pulled it back, the hardwood floors were on the perimeter. But the house was built in the 1800s or whatever. That's how they built it. Perimeter, and they had a rug that just went in the middle. Because hardwood, I guess, is more expensive than doing that. So let's say that happens to you. You get into close, or you get the keys, you go do your walkthrough, because there's no hardwood floor now. Is that substantially in the same condition? Reasonable wear and tear accepted? That's the problem, you guys. That is the way the house was. Your buyer doesn't get to say anything because nothing changed. You may not have saw it, but nothing changed.
But wouldn't that go up under the disclosure?
Under what? I mean,
Yeah, I think that's basically what you're saying, though, that if you can't prove it, then you're basically.
well, it's not saying you can't prove it. I mean, you can
But no, but
clearly
even,
see that it was like that. I mean, the guy didn't cut out the hardwood floor. Now, I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but it's not like the guy cut out the hardwood floor. It was that way. So when it says substantially the same condition, it's in the same condition it was when you saw the house. You just didn't see the floor. Where you might see it is under a bed or the closets or whatever. So here's the really good part. I'm going to scare you a lot with these kind of things. The good news, they don't happen that often. So now watch, you guys, all your first deals will have that. And you'll be calling me. All right. B, delivers all keys, the agent representing the buyer. Deliver all keys, I think that's supposed to say, to the agent representing the buyer in the transaction. Removes all of seller's personal property from the property. Buyer shall have the right to inspect the property, ensure compliance with the agreement, which shall be conducted when the keys are turned over to the purchaser. This is the one, you guys, that happens a lot. And it's usually not what's left in the house. It's usually the crap that's left in the garage. And, oh, Doug, here's your keys to the house. And Doug goes, great. Doug then walks into the garage and sees that the garage is full of crap. So what's the answer there? Does the clock stop? Or is the clock still running as far as occupancy?
it would still be occupied, right?
It's still running, you guys. Our PA, this is different than most people's occupancy addendums or lines. It doesn't address that. Now, this is probably overkill, but stuff like this is important. The clock doesn't stop. It's clear. Until that stuff is out of the house, the clock's still running.
So to what level? I mean, like if you left a basketball,
A basketball,
right? I mean, it's extreme, but I'm just saying.
a basketball, I don't think you'd have much of a case. You left a bunch of crap, how about paint cans and lumber and stuff
Well,
like
that's gonna be my
that?
next thing, is
Right.
paint cans, because that's what's usually.
Yeah.
That's usually what's left behind is
Right.
paint cans or construction material.
Right. Guess what? That needs to be gone. Because is it fair to the buyer that the buyer has to clean this stuff up, especially if he can't throw the stuff away? It's one thing to haul the stuff to the curb, but if you can't haul it to the curb, you gotta hire somebody or take it somewhere to pay. The clock's still running.
So speaking of that, if your garbage day is normally on Thursday and they have it piled to the side of the house versus the curb. and-
That's where,
and they're
remember-
moving out of state to the.
Well, and that's
go
where,
back.
remember I said, have a good relationship with people and try to work through it. Because if it's a cranky deal, you guys, yeah, that could be a problem.
I went there and did for my client, because he moved out of state today.
I've done it for one of my clients. I could have killed this guy. I mean, he was the client literally from hell.
I went there and just threw it all in my truck.
All right, any questions on any of this? All right, next. Oh, I'm sorry. Friday, I will not be here. So, no class. Two people have no class. All right. I will see you next Wednesday. Have a
Hey, Pete?
marvelous, yes,
Can you stay on for a minute after? I have a question,
I wait. Something
not
like that.
related to what we did today.
That's fine. All right,
Thanks,
but it's
Pete.
gotta be quick because I got an appointment. Go ahead.
So I talked to Matt a little bit about this yesterday. I have a CMA that I'm kind of struggling with.
Okay.
My sister-in-law's property is a new construction built in like 2018 up in Ottawa, Ottawa County, Grand Haven. And I'm having a really hard time finding comparables.
You're not gonna find them on our MLS.
No,
Nope.
I know he did mention that our MLS is more geared towards like the tri-county.
Yeah, I mean, are they thinking about selling or what are they doing?
No, she just knew that I sent her a text with them regarding the contest, and she said, "Ooh, do my
Yeah.
house." So no, they
Yeah,
just moved in 3 years ago.
unfortunately, yeah, you're not gonna be able to really do a CMA on that. You'd have to get into their MLS. And you're not gonna be able to do that because you won't have access.
Okay, but
That
I thought
makes
it was
sense.
for the whole state of Michigan.
No, our MLS is just, it's really this area. We do have data sharing with other MLSs with some, but not the whole state. So there's not going to be, the odds of you finding what you need is not gonna happen.
Okay, and
I
the
hate to
funny
be the
thing,
bearer of bad news.
the funny thing is that I found 2 houses in her subdivision on her street, but I couldn't find her house. So just,
Yeah,
and
that's kinda-
I even went back like 1,000 days because I figured 365, she's been there 3 years. So
Right.
yeah, it was just, okay,
All righty, sorry about that.
that's okay. Thanks for your help. Have a good weekend.
All right,
Bye,
see you guys.
everyone.
Thanks a lot, Pete.
Bye-bye.